321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Hello everyone, my name is Yasser Bashir. I'm a commander with the Houston Police Department, and I would like to welcome you to another episode on Aj TV about policing. We have Sergeant Yusuf again here, and we're going to talk about community policing and how it has evolved over the years.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
First, I just want to say Ramadan Mubarak to you,
Same to you.
and all the wonderful viewers who are fasting, and I pray that they have a blessed Ramadan and all the prayers are accepted, and as well as yours.
Yeah.
So how's everything going?
Everything's been awesome.
good.
Work has been interesting over the past few weeks, but I mean, it's good to be back in front of the camera and talk to the viewers again about what we love doing most, policing.
Yep, I see you wearing half sleeves, so summer is here. It's getting hot in Houston.
Yeah, summer is here. It's already getting hot out there, and that normally has an adverse effect on crime as well.
Yes.
So we're out there doing our
So we're
job
going to be out
supposed
there, and we're going to make sure that we keep our community safe, because usually we see a big trend in increase in crime.
Absolutely, yeah.
And we need to be just one step ahead of it to make sure that we reduce it much as possible.
We're taking proper action and making sure that everything's taken care of.
Now, this show is very interesting because I believe like our profession is many times misrepresented.
Absolutely.
And people have this different ideas, different perception. What is it we do? And Hollywood and Bollywood has not given us justice.
No, we've got TV shows all over the world from all sorts of communities, and they take it and they wrap it out into a 2-hour movie or a 45-minute show that shows that crime happens and then it solves. And I can tell you almost every other scene that I go to, when I show up, people will ask us, hey, you need to fingerprint, and they're expecting us to be able to solve that crime while we're standing there, or they're quoting other shows that have been able to do it, and if you have to explain to them that's not how it works, because we have different procedures, we have different systems that come into play, and it takes time to build on those systems and solve a crime. It doesn't happen instantly. Most of the times it does, if the perpetrator is right there, but it takes a little bit of time to get.
Because sometimes people get their sense of reality about a certain profession they had never come in contact with from the movies.
Yeah.
Especially Bollywood. And I tell you, some of those actors, the things they do, I was like, man, that's not possible. You don't do that.
Absolutely.
You cannot never do that.
You can't get in a shootout and just walk away from it without doing any paperwork. We have to go through the whole diagram. We have to do so many things to make sure that it's working.
So that's why what I want to do, what we want to do is to educate the community, okay, what is it we do and what type of philosophy we follow to maintain and continually win the trust of our community.
Absolutely.
First, let's start with this. What are our basic duties as law enforcement that we are authorized to perform?
So basic duties of a law enforcement officer is to keep the peace. That's number one, and to preserve life. That's very important. We build on those and we go forward. From there on, we go into the law giving us the power to find crime or solve criminal acts that have happened. In certain branches, we're even allowed to work on the civil side, where we have departments that can do civil service, such as taking care of evictions or money disputes. But for the most part, law enforcement is regarding criminal acts. Our job is to make sure that we prevent crime from happening, or if a crime takes place, we find the person that's responsible for it, and the justice system takes its part and makes sure that the person responsible is held accountable for their actions, however heinous the action may be or how simple the action.
Now, the other thing is people get confused is we also have legitimized use of force. We can use force, but it has to be articulated and has to be reasonable.
Yeah.
And I'm willing to guarantee that every police department has a policy of when, and how they can use force, even deadly force.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
In my opinion, I believe that we have very strict use of force policy, and I believe the citizen has more authority when they want to when they have more, not authority, but I guess they have more power.
Yeah.
In fact, we have more restriction when we can or cannot
Absolutely,
do.
because
That's on duty and off duty.
Yeah, let's take HP, for example. One of our policies is that every time we draw a taser or a weapon and we point it at a person, we have to do a use of force.
Right.
Or we actually have to call the sergeant. So I'm called out quite often. Scenes where officers have, ours is so strict that if we have forced handcuffing, just as forcing a person's hands behind their back, we're considered use of force.
The reason why the reason I want the viewers to know is because I have seen on YouTube videos in other countries with the police officer slapping somebody
Yeah,
and doing
absolutely.
street justice.
Yeah, absolutely. It
Or
happens.
having the guy, I've seen it.
Yeah.
Have the citizen bend over and he takes his shoes,
Yeah.
or a baton is hitting him in the rear end.
Yeah, and that's very common on the outside. It happens a lot in third world countries because there's no oversight.
Yes.
America is one of those few countries that has a huge oversight over their policing departments. People may think because of the media that that's not the case, but as we come across, we see that we have a huge oversight when it comes to our use of force. We can't just go out there and start using any sort of force on a person, because as a police officer, we're always taught that you will use the proper amount of force required. Now, sometimes, unfortunately, that may even require using deadly weapons. But it's allowed, but there's a certain continuum to it, and unfortunately, that's why we're here. We're trying to explain that.
You're trying to explain that because some of the people, the viewers may have the perception like we can't do anything. Actually, we can't. We have limitations, but we are authorized to use force, but we're going to do it wisely and reasonably. But moving on. So let's talk about the history of how we have evolved in our profession. We didn't get here overnight. Actually, we had some challenges that we had to overcome, and this took Supreme Court decisions. It took community involvement. It took government involvement to make us more professional.
We've got cases on federal, state, and local level that are to this day still being challenged and still being rewritten and still being enhanced to formulate a proper way of life as to how we can do our job and how we can solve crime and how we can protect people. That continues to happen.
So let's talk about like every profession. There is somebody who significantly contributed to that profession.
Yeah.
In our profession, it is Robert Peel.
Sir Robert Peel.
Sir Robert Peel, and let's talk about him, and then that way people will understand the principle he came out with more than almost 200 years ago. Still apply today.
Yeah, absolutely. So Robert Peel was a gentleman that was in London back in the day when London was the Wild West. It was one of the most culturally diverse cities in the world. And we're talking about the 1800s. So obviously crime was rampant. They had a lot of gangs out there, and this is way before gangs were ever considered gangs. They were just called hooligans. So they were out there causing chaos, and Sir Robert Peel came up with a system where we would take a bunch of people and we would use them to solve crime. Now, his initial concept was that he would have people come out, and if a person saw somebody committing a crime, the person would start whistling and getting everybody's attention. So they were using community back in the day.
But remember the funny story was that the rich people that were volunteer, what did they do? They ended up getting substitute.
Exactly.
And that system was not effective.
So that was another thing that those people that were being picked by Sir Robert Peel were people from the community themselves. Like, hey, you are going to go out there and you're going to do this tonight. But people that were rich were able to afford it. They'd pay somebody else to say, hey, go do my job for me. But the basic concept was that even then we were using the community to help us take criminals. It wasn't like the officer or the constable, whatever you want to call it at the time, was the one that was going out there and trying to grab them. But in fact, they would ask for the community's help to take the criminal down so they could go and charge him and present him in front of a magistrate and get that paper.
So the other thing he did was he wanted to make sure that once we had as individual, he started organizing these officers into a force. So what he did was he made sure that did not reflect the military style of policing. So
absolutely.
he made sure that if you look at our uniform, many of our uniforms are light blue. So they're not, because so that way the people will know that they're here to hold civil issues, not civil, but be civilian police instead of military.
Absolutely.
Another thing he did was he made sure that they had different shifts, made sure that they have policy and procedures.
Yeah, exactly.
He
was formulating as it was going on because this is something that a man is doing for the first time. He didn't have a guidebook handed out to him. He was the guidebook. He started looking at things that were working and things that were not. And then he started organizing a proper police force, which is now the London Police Force. And I mean, they have one of the richest police histories in the world. So if you ever go to London, you can go to their museum and actually see what they went through.
But let me discuss some of these principles. And I want the viewers to listen carefully. So here's some of them. He came with 10 principles, and I'm just going to discuss a few. And how relevant they still are today.
Yeah, absolutely.
The basic mission for which the police exists is to prevent crime and disorder.
We're still doing that. That's never going to change.
Now this is amazing. This one. Police seek and preserve public favor not by catering to the public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolute impartial service to the law.
Yeah. So
Man,
that, yeah. And
you have to be impartial when you get to a scene.
Exactly. It doesn't matter
yeah.
what your race, color, creed, caste, or society influence level is. Everybody gets treated the same. We don't cater to and just a basic example of this is people have this mindset that they say, hey, if I call first, the police will come and cater to me.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. This principle is very simple. It was coded more than 200 years ago, but applies to this day the same way. When we get to a scene, we are impartial to who calls or who does what. We follow the pattern of the crime. We look at the facts and we solve it that way, so that the law stays impartial. The law is enforced equally to everybody that is at that scene. It doesn't change just because you're rich or poor or whatever color, creed, caste, or religion you believe in. It stays exactly the same.
Doesn't matter if you're rich. Doesn't matter if you're poor. You're still gonna get handcuffed.
Yeah.
Be placed in the back seat.
Yeah.
You're still gonna get a mug shot just like anybody
Exactly.
else.
Yeah. And you're still gonna go in front of a judge. So we're gonna have to get your bond paperwork done. So it's the same. It doesn't change.
I'm gonna extend on that impartiality. How the law enforcement who are not impartial, who are involved in politics, they have huge corruption problems. They have trust problem with integrity issues with the community they serve.
Yeah.
But let's talk about, where do we get our power from? Where do we get authority to exercise what we do on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, so this is basically the Constitution. The Constitution allows us, the Constitution grants us power. The amendments in the Constitution grant us power, but the biggest one is the Fourth Amendment. The Fourth Amendment tells us that, hey, we have to have proper search and seizure causes. If we don't have that, we can't come and search or seize you. That gives us, and when I know that when we say search and seizure, people normally think about their home, their car, or their person. That's not the case. We can actually look for people through it. But that's primarily where we drive from, and that's when you hear a lot of people say, hey, I know my rights, you need to be able to quote the Constitution to be able to protect us.
Now, in lame term, probable cause for us is like the main tool we have.
We have two tools. We have probable cause and reasonable suspicion.
So let me define what probable cause is. In lame term, probable cause is defined as a reasonable belief. Reasonable belief. It doesn't have to be beyond a reasonable belief, but reasonable belief that an individual has, is, or will commit a crime. Has, will, or commit a crime. And now, what is a reasonable belief, and how do we establish that reasonable belief?
And that reasonable belief comes from what you, me, or anybody as a normal person will look and say, hey, I think that guy just committed a crime. That doesn't have to be a police officer or somebody with knowledgeable background, but it is a reasonable person, just a normal person that says, hey, I think that crime's about to happen, or that crime did happen. And that's basically how it goes into it.
But that can lead to some racial profiling. How many times we look at the video, on TV, on YouTube, where somebody is just doing something like picking up litter, and the person happens to be black or some other race, and somebody calls the police, or somebody's wearing a turban, they'd assume that the person's a terrorist, and they call the police.
Yeah, absolutely, that happens. Yeah, and
but when we could get there as law enforcement, okay, we look at the facts, we look at totality, and to look at the fact, a reasonable person, if a crime has been committed or not.
Yeah. And that branches off into reasonable suspicion, which actually can be defined as an actual police officer's belief from their past experiences that if a crime has or will occur. So that's another thing that a lot of people don't understand, is that we do have reasonable suspicion as well as a tool. It doesn't always have to be a probable cause, but people do occasionally mix the two and believe that we must have probable cause for anything else. But that's not the case.
There are different ways we can get reasonable belief, or we can get evidence. One is, like you just mentioned, observational evidence. That's something, let's say if I'm sitting at the intersection, I see somebody run a red light. Okay, that's my belief. He ran a red light and he committed a crime, ran a red light. Or we can have circumstantial evidence.
Yeah, absolutely.
That means we have multiple witnesses coming forward saying that this person committed this crime.
Yeah.
We have...
Or if you have shots fired in an area and you walk by and there's a guy walking around with a gun, there's circumstantial evidence that, hey, this is it's convenient that the shots were just fired and there's a guy walking around with a gun, so you can add that to circumstantial as well.
And you also mentioned an officer may use his or her expertise to establish reasonable belief.
That's the biggest one.
Our evidence may also be obtained through information such as informants,
That's big in our line of work, especially for our concerned divisions. We do use a lot of confidential informants to do our job.
Or what about those cases? What I find it very amazing is that a person commits a murder, and they, through DNA, 30 years down the line, they're able to convict them.
Yeah,
just based on
absolutely.
DNA.
CODIS is an international database that is used to where we can find DNA, and that actually is a very important tool that we have in our toolbox. It allows us. It's gone back years.
Yeah.
Like
So the point is that the evidence can come in different forms.
Yeah.
Just the DNA match automatically that's like
yeah,
beyond a
exactly,
reasonable-
because your DNA is just it's yours.
And once in a billion.
unique,
I mean, it's a ridiculous number. It
Exactly.
eliminates a lot of the whole population.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we are going to talk about how police have evolved in the past 200 years.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Welcome back, viewers. We were talking about community policing, but now what we're going to do is we're going to talk about in the past 200 years how policing in America has evolved.
Yeah.
We didn't get here overnight. We had to go through a lot of struggles, a lot of challenges
Absolutely.
to make our profession a professional.
Yeah.
I mean, to make it a highly honorable and professional.
Yeah. Proper guidelines,
Yes.
proper procedures, and be able to say, hey, we're proud of what we do.
Yes. So let's talk about. Okay, policing is defined at different eras.
Yeah.
So from 1840 to 1930, we were in what's called the political era.
Yeah, that's true.
And that was what I would say was the dark ages for our profession.
Absolutely.
Because the law enforcement profession was heavily involved with politics, and which I think is a very dangerous combination.
Yeah, money was being exchanged a whole lot. As we said that in the beginning, that Sardar Peel would send people out and they would buy somebody else to go do their job. So money played a very important role. Politics and power played a very important role. Police departments were literally being bought and sold,
Yes.
and they were working for whoever was paying their salary. So if a rich person could go out there and they needed to have something done, they would just pay police officers to do it for them. So it was a very dark time where we didn't have a direction.
No.
We more or less we were mercenaries for hire and just enforcing the law at the will of the person that was paying the salary, but not the law itself.
So the other issues that were happening was the officers. We had walking beats back then.
Yeah.
So the officer would walk on the beat. I mean, they would walk the beat, meet the citizens, and they lacked a lot of they lacked supervision from the supervisors.
Yeah.
And because of that, they had a lot of discretion, and they would just have a badge, and they go in the
Basically
street
it
and
was
do
thugs
whatever they
with,
want.
thugs with badges. That's where that term came from, thugs with badges, because they would go down there with it. They would shake down the innocent person, take their money. They were collecting for themselves from every shop that was open out there. Corruption was running rampant. It was a very harsh time for
Yes.
police officers, because nobody wants to look back at that and say, hey, that's where we came from, because that was hard for us.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it was. Another thing was the politics were heavily involved. The politician decided if the officer kept his job or not.
Yeah.
So they had to please the politician. Another issue was we didn't have civil service.
Yeah.
So you could be
not
hired or fired, overnight.
Yeah, there was no protection for your job or no protection of way of how to do stuff.
So, but then from 1930 to 1980, we changed. We made huge progress in our profession, and that era, that 50 years, is known as the professional era or policing reform.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Sergeant Yusuf, I believe that some of the countries, the third world countries, they're still stuck in the political era.
Absolutely, they are. If you look at a lot of third world countries, they don't have a matrix on how to work their policing system. Their policing systems are exactly the same they were back in the day, and they just don't. It's not that they lack the capability. It's just that they don't want to take the time to reinforce something and move themselves along into the new generation of what policing needs to be this day.
Right,
today.
right.
Yeah. So
And the other thing is, it's very common in those countries where the police officer will stop you and say, "Give me money, I'll let you go."
Oh yeah, absolutely. That happens quite a lot. Yeah, that happens quite a lot.
But here in the U.S., that's like a rare, and if the officer does do that, I'm willing to almost guarantee he'll get caught.
Oh, they'll get indicted. They'll absolutely get indicted, absolutely, because we have body cameras now. A lot of us do. I'm wearing one of these body camera mounts right now, and everything we do is recorded. Uneditable, raw as is, presented, and that's what we use as evidence, and that's what's used as evidence against officers that do the wrong thing. That body camera is
because that has to do with transparency.
Exactly.
That we are what we do. We're telling you what this is what we did, and we have recording, so that way we can maintain.
And that's where we now
trust.
come in, because from the 1990s onwards, we moved into the community policing era.
Before we do that, let's talk about the reform. What were some of the major reforms that happened? But the one thing was in those 50 years was. Remember Sir Robert Peel talked about being impartial? Yeah. Well, the police departments, we are impartial.
Yeah.
And we have to make sure that we don't take sides or we don't favor one specific group. Yeah. We need to address everybody's concerns.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the main thing was the reform era was to separate the policing from, remove politics from the American policing. And some of the things that happened was that we were trained better, we have better policies, we have civil service protection, and things like that.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to add on?
Yeah, well, there were still problems back then. We still had a lot of racial tension between the 1960s to the 1980s, and I think that's what started to thrust us into the community, into the next era, into the community policing era, because that was a major issue that we were having. Yes. Policing was still being done, crime was still being solved, but at the same time, we weren't treating each other as we said we would.
So what happened was, actually, I'm thinking back, what happened was before in the political era, the officers were walking the beats. Yeah. But what changed was in the 50s is now the officers were in police cars.
Yeah, absolutely.
So now they're not, yes, it's a pro and, there's some benefits from walking the beats, but there are also some benefits of walking the car. Yeah. So what it did was actually separate the community from the officers. Yeah. So then start having the mindset, it's us versus them.
Yeah, absolutely.
And there were a lot of tension because they didn't interact with the community, they didn't understand them. Yeah. And there were a lot of racial tensions and other tensions of how the community was being treated. Yeah. And this was, like you said, now it led us to, okay, we need to get more involved.
Get back to the community, get back to them and start connecting with them, start using them like we did before, because it helps. The community does help.
Because during that era, we were following what's called the traditional policing.
Yeah, exactly.
Meaning we looked at the data, we looked at arrest,
crime patterns, and then that was it.
But now we are in the community era, community policing era, which started about 1980 until current, but we are also involving into a different
as we go down the show, we'll talk about more how our involvement with the community comes in. But yes, as from the 1990s, we've come across a long way working on the racial tension that's been going on. We've been working on how to be more transparent to the community by using body-worn cameras and having our policies. And back in the day, the policies were hidden because nobody wanted to tell anybody how policing was done. But now our policies are actually out there. You can very easily find them on the internet and know, hey, this is what guides a certain police department to do the things that they are doing. And that helps because when the community looks at the policies, they are able to understand and say, okay, this is why it happened. This is why they did what they did.
So what happened was after the 1980s or during that time period, the government and the community leaders began to recognize that they also must take responsibility in keeping the neighborhood safe. Yeah. And one way of doing that is that they need to come up with different methods, different platforms to work with the police, because we are partners. We're not just the police job is this, the community job is this.
Absolutely.
And over the years, as you know, the police has evolved, and we actually have been given a lot more responsibility.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which we didn't have that before. For example, we're dealing with homelessness, we're dealing with mental health issues, we're dealing with a lot of barking dogs or stray dogs, which we didn't have to do that before, but now we're dealing with community ills as well.
Yeah, like we did a show back earlier where we were talking about the youth, how we have a huge responsibility with the youth now. It's added to us so that we can make sure that our youth is growing up to be a productive part of society versus running straight. So there's a lot more responsibility that added to us versus what we had before.
So let's talk about the community policing and the three components of community policing. The first, I'm going to mention three components, and then we'll go into defining it and explaining a little bit more. The three components of community policing is this: community partnership. The second is the organizational transformation, that the police department organization it has to change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the third is problem solving. Yeah. So you have community partners, organization change, and also and how you work together to solve the problems. So let's talk about first is the community partnership, which is defined as collaborative partnership between a law enforcement agency and the individuals and organizations that serve to develop solutions to problems and increase trust in police.
Now this is where you come in because you actually we've both been to several different community policing partnership meetings where we've sat down with a lot of community leaders and they've been able to explain to us the problems that they're having, and sometimes they even help us through funding and through other means to be able to better do our job.
Absolutely.
But as a commander, you see that firsthand as to how it helps us be better at our job.
Yes.
Yeah, so that's something that's there.
The police departments, they are part of the city, part of the city. Like for example, Houston Police, we're part of the city of Houston, and our salaries are paid by taxpayers. So the city has money and everybody has a budget.
Yeah.
But as always, I mean, I've been on for years. Budget is always an issue.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, budget is always an issue.
that never
Even
goes
getting
away.
a simple pen is always not a challenge, but it's something it has to be accounted for.
Yeah, absolutely.
And we have limited resources. So what happens is the community, our partners, when they come in, they fill in those voids, and actually we make each other better.
Yeah.
And that's the whole purpose of us is working together. Now we have more minds, more resources, attacking the same problem. And actually, what I've seen is you are able to solve the problem and make the community safer.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's talk about different partners. Okay. We have our other agency partners. Those are, for example, Houston Police.
We've got Fort Bend, we've got Harris County, the Sheriff's Office, we've got the constables, Montgomery County, Fort Bend.
FBI, our federal agency partners.
Federal agency, three-letter federal agencies that come out there and help us a lot. So it's what we call a proper fusion of all the major departments that come out and help each other out. Because the FBI or federal agencies refer to us as a resident agency. That's what they call us. And it's very good to know that, hey, because they actually help us not with just intelligence, but also with resources to be able
because
to
our criminals are, our criminals could be their criminals tomorrow, and they move around.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
how we benefit from this is that we share information, and what the current trend that may be happening up north, eventually it may come down south.
Absolutely.
We also have our community leaders from different communities, for example, Hispanic, the Black, or Asians, or Indian, or Pakistani. We have a
absolutely.
Chamber of Commerce, our business community leaders. We also have private businesses that help us, make the community safer. Now, the other thing I'm going to talk about is, yes, the media is also our partners.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. The media does a very important job. Sometimes the media is able to find things and link them for us, and we're able to look at it and say, oh, hey, okay, well, that makes sense, because the media is everywhere.
Yes.
We can't be everywhere even if we try.
Right.
The media really does have more eyes than we do, and sometimes that helps us because they end up being our eyes. Because I remember there was a chase where our helicopters got left. It was a couple of years ago. Our helicopters got left behind by the car, but the media helicopter was fast enough to keep up with the car chase, and we were eventually able to capture the guy out in Chambers County. It's interesting.
The media, they play a significant, because they're able to communicate. For example, if there's a crime occurs, or a pattern, or a crime pattern that's occurring, or anything significant, they're able to get that message out. But I believe that media also has a responsibility to make sure the information is correct and not create a fear where people will start panicking.
Yeah, that's true. There is a huge responsibility on media itself, because the way they portray everything can change the matrix of the way that the community sees us.
Right, exactly.
And that's very important to us. That's very, very important to us.
Right. So now what we're going to do is we're going to move on. Okay, we talked about the different community members. Now, before that, I just have one little small gripe, because some people think just because you attend a dinner meeting, somehow you are community partners. No. Community partners mean it's just like being married.
Yeah,
okay?
absolutely.
Where you're sharing your thoughts, you are involved in the decision making.
Yeah.
So not just attending events, but it's not about getting pictures of the politicians or the mayor or the governor.
Yeah.
It's about you taking active role in addressing the ills of the community.
Yeah,
that's something I just want to bring up.
Yeah, and that's something that we've seen throughout time.
Yeah.
People will want to be around people that are politicians or
Yes,
high
power,
ranking, but when it comes to the community, you're there. It's not just for dinner, it's not just for food, or it's not just for getting phone numbers and making friends, but it's actually there because you need to know that you are part of, you're one piece of the puzzle, and the community is another piece, and they both need to come together. It can't just be about one
Like for
person.
example, I have when I first promoted to commander or captain to commander, one thing I heavily relied on was the community partnership because I needed them to help me reduce crime. Because without them, it will make our job very difficult. So some of the things I did was I set up, for example, our business partners. So I set up business crime safety meeting. What are the issues that business owners are having? We also do a PIP meeting, monthly PIP meeting, where I listen to the community concerns, what kind of issues they're having. Because sometimes the community is more aware of what's happening in their community than we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
They know that person who's under the jail selling drugs.
Yeah.
Compared to us, then once they bring the
Absolutely.
information, we can go and address it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's I can tell you right now, when I was in patrol, that was one of the ways we caught a lot of drug dealers was they would tell us, hey, this guy, he's wearing exactly this, and this, comes and stands at this corner every day and sells drugs. We were able to catch people like that. They even knew where they were hiding the drugs right next to them. So it helps a lot.
And then when the community member, when they trust us, that the information that they provide us, and we will follow through with it, and we will meet their needs, they will be more happy to cooperate.
Yeah.
When they become victims, they will be more happy to make a report.
Yeah.
They will become good witnesses.
Yeah.
I will go no further. They will want their kids to be police officers.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what we want.
I agree. I absolutely
I mean, recently I was at somebody's house, and this lady, she said that she had one problem. She had a problem, and when she saw the police, she felt so relieved. She felt, okay, the police is here.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be okay.
Yeah.
That's the kind of trust that we want to have with the community members, not the one, like some countries, like I'll say it again, where you see the police, you fear, you want to walk the other way.
Exactly.
Because you feel like they may arrest you or put you in jail for whatever reason. So that's not what we want.
Yeah.
We want that trust. When you see us, you feel comfortable. Hey, I'm in good hands.
Yeah.
Whatever the decision he makes, it's going to be the right decision.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's very important to us because that's where my thing comes in when people will look at us and they look at their kids and say, hey, if you're not good, the police officer's going to arrest you, and that's one of my gripes is because I'm like, look, here's the thing, you need to tell them, hey, we're here to help them.
Yes.
At a very young age where they're still moldable, you need to be able to go up to them and say, hey, look, those people are here to protect you. If you have any problems, go to them, or you can be one of them. That's what we want to hear, and we can always work with that. So
what we're going to do now is we're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back in a minute, and then we will continue with our community policing presentation.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green right outside Henry County. 911 dispatch.
321 status.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green right outside Henry County. 911 dispatch.
321 status.
Welcome back, viewers. We were talking about community policing in the U.S. In our previous 15 minutes, we talked about community partnership. But now we have a quick video we would like you to watch how the community and the police come together to resolve community concerns.
Today what we're doing is we're recognizing our law enforcement, all of the command stations in our district that we partner with on an ongoing basis throughout the year. And so we're recognizing some of the officers that have done some special things in the area over the year, and we just want to say thank you.
The DRT officers and from HPD and the management districts have a very strong relationship that's super critical and very valuable, I think, to everybody that's involved.
It's important to have that collaboration so that way, as we're going out to do the crime element, they can also help us with the community side of it as well.
And this collaboration with the Southwest Management District and the business owners out there has really enabled us to bring and leverage both of our resources to come together to find the same problem and to work together on that for viable solutions. We have worked to get equipment from you. Thank you very much. Some overtime. And I just wanted to show you and tell you that crime is down in Part 1 crime, both violent and nonviolent, in Midwest, West Side, and South Gessner because of these efforts. Thank you.
And I'm going to ask Commander Yasser Bashir to come, and we are going to reveal who the Midwest Officer of the Year is.
I want to recognize a very special officer who has done a tremendous job this year because of her leadership and because of what she was able to accomplish. Can I just have Officer Melissa Lopez come to the stage while I...
So here to present the South Gessner Officer of the Year, we have Lieutenant James Skelton, and he's here representing Commander Craig Bellamy.
Today I'm going to recognize Officer Ricky Lopez. Officer Lopez, stand up, please. So we truly appreciate the work you do, and we need about 100 more guys just like you. So I just congratulate you on a job well done.
Thank you, sir.
Last but not least, we have the West Side Officer of the Year, and to present that on behalf of Commander Fallhaber, please help me welcome Lieutenant Timothy Trumeter.
All right, for the West Side Officer Year, I'd like to, if you would, welcome up Sergeant Tavis Parkerson, please. Sergeant Parkerson is truly an asset to the Houston Police Department and the Southwest Management Division, and that's why I'm proud to give this award to Sergeant Parkerson for Officer of the Year.
Welcome back, viewers. Thank you for watching the video, and I hope that you realize how important it is for us, the police, and the community to work together, and the different nonprofit organizations.
Absolutely.
In making our community safer. The one thing I forgot to mention was we also have nonprofit organizations that actually provide extra resources
Absolutely. Absolutely,
to the victims that we're not able to do that.
Yeah, like the Texas Victim Compensation Act is a very big act that we recently had a robbery. We had a victim who unfortunately didn't have health benefits, and he was very worried that he would not be able to go and afford health care at a hospital. And we were able to explain to him that if you have the Texas Victim Compensations Act, whatever your bill is, the state will take care of it. That's very important to us. That the state, it shouldn't stop you from being being healthy just because you were part of the crime.
Isn't this an amazing country?
Yeah, it is. Absolutely.
Just look at our amazing partners. For example, domestic violence victims.
Yeah.
We have nonprofit organizations that can provide you housing, that can provide you financial needs to get you back on your feet, get away from the aggressor.
Yeah.
And those things, it's hard for us to fill in the void. And this is where our partners come in and extend the services that which we are not able to do.
Yeah, the police department is never alone. It's not going to be just one thing, but it's different. Yeah, that makes sense.
Now, let's shift on the community policing. Let's talk about organization transformation. This is the alignment of organizational management structure, personnel, information system to support community partnership and proactive problem solving.
Yeah.
Now, in lame terms, what this means is the whole department needs to have the mindset that we are in a public service industry, and our customers who are our victims, the people who call the police, we're here to provide a service.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's the way that we look at it now. That's the way the Houston Police Department looks at it now, is because we believe that everybody that comes to us with a problem, we want to solve it in the best way possible, and in the meantime, we also want to gear our infrastructure for our department in a way where people are proud to come to us and say, hey, if I have a problem, I can go to these guys and these guys will be able to solve it in a proper way. And that takes a lot, because policing changed during the 1990s, where police officers weren't really connecting with the beat, but we're coming back to the point where we are changing our organization to where our officers now are recognizing the beats, because we're keeping the same officers in the beats. So then when they go out there, they know the area, and the area knows them. So and we're also taking officers that have been officers and sergeants and above who have been too far away from the street, and we're bringing them closer to the street so they know what's going on out there. So in case we need to deploy them back to the street, they're able to come back and work like there's no difference in it.
Now, with the community policing mindset, we also take that approach when we hire people, when we train them, we educate them, and we put them back in the street. We also have cultural diversity training. One more thing is, one of our core principles
is diversity.
Diversity.
We will be, the department will be created with the same diverse background as is the community that it represents. So we have a lot of, we have everybody here. We have Asians, we have Indians, Pakistanis, we have people from the Middle East. I know you recently got a couple of officers that are from the Middle East that just promoted out of the new class and they came out. So it's good to see that we have such a diverse department.
So what we try to do is not just the department, but also different commands, units, divisions, that they should reflect the community, the cultural makeup and the ethnicity of the community that they serve.
Yeah, absolutely.
For example, in Midwest Division, I have Arabs, I have Hispanics, I have Pakistani and Indians. So I need those officers to be at Midwest Division to be able to represent the makeup of the community and also be able to provide service to them.
Absolutely.
And research has shown that people feel comfortable to speaking with the officers that are like them.
Yeah, that's happened to me a lot. Like the robbery that I earlier mentioned, the reason we were able to connect with the victim so clearly was because he spoke Urdu. And I speak Urdu, and I'm one of the department linguists for Urdu.
That's good.
Yeah, so I surprised him, I guess, because when I started talking to him for a second, he completely forgot all his pain and was like, "Oh, you speak Urdu?" And I was like, "Yes, I do. So let's talk about it. Let's give me an idea. Now you can talk in your language and get comfortable." He gave us so much more information because all of a sudden he realized, hey, this person is going to connect to me because he's speaking my language. We know language is a very important tool for connection. So he was able to give us a lot more information, and that's what we're aiming for. That's what we're aiming for with this diversity.
Our philosophy, you speak the language of your customer.
Exactly.
And because we constantly need to build relationship and build contact with the people who serve. As you mentioned, in Houston Police Department, we are, I would say, the most diverse department in the nation. Yeah. Because we have Jews, Christians, people from all different backgrounds, religious background, Buddhists, you name it.
And everybody's recognized at the same pace. So everybody has the same opportunities. Everybody has availed the same opportunities.
We have people from all over the world, from North Africa, Middle East, Pakistan, India.
I never thought when I was in Pakistan that I was going to end up being a sergeant in the Houston Police Department. That was never on the goal, but here I am. So that's another thing.
Now we're going to talk about problem solving. Okay, now we have a partnership, we have changes in organization, but now how do we work together to resolve the problems?
Yeah, and that's very important because we want to bring all these now. If you don't have a direction, your ship is just going to keep going in a circle. So you bring everybody together. We start using the tools that we have. We introduce the community those tools that we have. We start taking whatever data they have, whatever information they have, and we start implementing into our tools, into our crime research. And one of the biggest things is very simple. Hey, I have a problem at this apartment complex. These are the people that are causing the problem. Can you help us fix it? And that's where we kick into it. If we get information the proper way, we can send it down to our line units, and the line units can go out there and handle it the way that they're supposed to. And that's very important in problem solving. Problem solving can only happen when you have simplified information. And it also had information, like we already discussed, it comes more from the community than it comes from us, and the community information is very important.
And we use different models. We use problem-solving models, we use SARA models, all this law enforcement term, how do we solve the problems in the community. Now, for example, what we try to do is we don't want to solve the approximate cause for the problem. We want to go to the root causes. And that sometimes is more challenging because the impact, you may not see it overnight because those are long-term solutions. It may take months to a year to
And that's
to
something that
those.
we come across quite a lot. Like I said, in an apartment complex, we get that quite often, especially the part of town that I work in. We have a lot of apartment complexes. They'll tell us, they'll call our station, or they'll tell us, hey, you need to come out here. We have this problem. A lot of times we're not able to immediately show them
the results,
or show them, hey, the root cause is going to get taken care of, because even if the information that comes in, sometimes it takes us a little while to figure out what the root cause is, because that's what we're aiming for. We want to make sure that those drug problems that you have in an apartment complex are gone, or that alcohol problem that you're having is gone. But it takes time. And that's something that we ask the community a lot of times is like, hey, have some patience with us. We're working on it. We're not ignoring you. It takes us time to get everything done, because we have procedures, we have laws that we have to follow, and we want to make sure that when we get rid of that problem, it doesn't come back because of a mistake that we made. So that's something that we look at very important.
So let's talk about community policing in Houston. How do we do things here, and why we are actually, I'm not sure if you know this or not, in the U.S. we we are on the top, probably number one when it comes to community policing.
Yeah.
And we are actually a role model for other agencies, what we do here.
Yeah.
But I'm going to make a point. There's an organization called the International Association of Chiefs of Police, IACP. They have over 30,000 members in 150 different countries. Okay? In 2000, yeah, 2000, that's a lot.
That's
in
a lot.
2010, you ready for this? They recognize Houston Police Department for our community policing project. We got the award for our community policing because we were the first to create a mental health division.
Yeah, absolutely. Our crisis intervention team, which we call CIT, and almost all of HPD's officers are CIT certified, and we go through that training yearly, is very important for us. That became the tool that I believe that right after we introduced it, agencies in Florida started using it, then agencies in Dallas started using it, and it's actually helped us quite a lot. We use it on a daily basis. It's a very important tool.
What was happening was officers were somebody or an individual was having an episode, a mental breakdown, and the officer they just didn't have the right tools to communicate.
The right understanding, the right knowledge to be able to and this is where, let me just run a little bit about what our CIT program is. So we actually have officers that are certified. And by certified, that doesn't mean that they're diagnosed, that they're clinicalists or practitioners, but these are officers who have gone through a very lengthy class of being able to identify what a mental health problem looks like. But these officers also actually have practitioners that are with them in the car. So when we call them and say, hey, we have this problem, the practitioner will come out there and actually diagnose the thing to the best of their ability on that scene, which makes it such a unique unit because you have somebody that's out there trying to help us take care of mental health problems.
The reason why I brought that up was because there were incidents in the community where citizens end up getting shot by the officer. I'm not saying Houston, but in all over the U.S. And we were in the cutting edge. We came up with a program. Okay, how can we better serve the community and reduce this kind of tension?
Yeah.
And CIT, I mean it's awesome. And it works, and you can also utilize it in your personal life.
Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing about Houston Police Department is Houston especially, is that we are a welcoming city. We welcome people from all different backgrounds, from all over the world. We are a very diverse city, and this is also a reflection on the Houston Police Department.
Yeah.
Some of the way we win trust is we are transparent with the community.
Yeah, absolutely.
We constantly extend our hand.
Yeah.
Day to day, month to month.
I know our chief is very transparent. He'll be the first to get out there and let people know what's exactly happening, what the road path to any problem is, how we're going to solve it, and what we're going to do about it. So
and this is the month of Ramadan. Our officers are allowed breaks to go and eat something to break their fast. We are invited to different community events to break bread with the community that we serve.
We actually had one on Friday. We had one on Friday where we had the Asian Law Enforcement Appreciation Gala. That was pretty awesome. That was a very good experience.
So we can go on and on. We're almost out of time. I just want to say thank you so much for coming today, and I just want to leave you with this a few words. Thank you so much for listening to the show. Please follow us on Facebook, Aj TV Houston. Leave some comments because we want to hear from you. What is it that you want us to talk about? Because we are doing this show for all of you, so that way all of you can benefit.
Absolutely.
Happy Ramadan, and I pray that all of your prayers are
answered, and happy Eid. Happy Eid as well, because we're going to have Eid pretty soon as well. I'm looking forward to that.
All right, thank you, and good night.
321 Central traffic stop.
21.
I'll be on East Green, right outside Henry County, 911 dispatch.
321 status.